we'll get started. My name is Jay. I'm an organizer with the Texas Easement Action Alliance. On the call with me, I have Miguel, who is also an organizer, and Chris John, who is an expert in eminent domain. Um, so let me see here. Yeah, if you guys want to go around and let us know where you're calling in from. I see. Oh, I can't see anybody's name, Miguel. I don't know if there's a. I can't see who is on the call.
Yeah, I see her in the chat. Alyssa Portaro, welcome, Alyssa, from Southwest Louisiana. Someone mentioned here in the chat from Texas. You can share which county you're at. That can give us a good sense. The pipeline route is unfortunately almost the entire state. But yeah, welcome everyone. Welcome everyone.
Great. And Jay, maybe what I'll do is I'll just invite some people to put some things into the chat if that's okay. And I'd be curious for the people who are on the
Yeah.
call, maybe you put it into the chat if you can figure out how to do that. I know it can be a little tricky sometimes, but put into the chat, like, are you along the pipeline route or are you just generally interested in landowner organization and landowner rights, that kind of thing? Or if you is this because you're on the route of the DeLa Express? Super.
Yeah, I see we have Jennifer in Hamilton County, Coaster family from Coleman County. Glad to have you all on the call.
Super. Yeah. So it looks like some of you are along the route. And Jay, do you want to give the update on what we know about the DeLa Express and what's happening? Um, yeah. And I think you're gonna find there's some generally good news. Yeah, but Jay, go ahead.
Yeah, good news being that nobody's heard anything other than them still filing with FERC. But yeah, for the most part, they've been pretty quiet. I don't know if you want to elaborate on that, Miguel, but I guess no news is good news other than them filing with FERC monthly.
That's right. It appears that this pipeline is on hold. And that's great news for us. We don't want this threatening our land, our resources. We also have heard from some land agents this confirm this that it's on hold. Now, the company itself has not admitted this. They have not publicly said we are not continuing with the DeLa Express pipeline. Instead, Moss Lake Partners is still submitting comments to FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. This is the federal agency that regulates pipelines and has authority over the company and the project. And that's a big portion of today's agenda is trying to pressure Moss Lake Partners to do the right thing and sh and communicate with us and admit that the project is on hold. That would be great for all landowners on the route. Chris will explain exactly how holding the proposal in limbo over your property is not good, not desirable. And so that's going to be a big portion of today's conversation. And then the second half is that we understand that this is not the only pipeline that a lot of you are dealing with. There are other pipelines. It's a feeding frenzy of these gas pipelines and carbon capture pipelines, CO2 pipelines. So we understand that there must be a long-term solution to address this chaos. And part of that has to be state legislation. We work with the organization Bold. Bold has run many different campaigns across the country that advocate for landowners and that pressure pipeline companies to to prevent pull back their projects or to give landowners substantial concessions. And something that has happened across the country, especially in the Midwest region, is that state legislature passing state laws really do help landowners as a long-term solution. So we're going to spend the latter half of today brainstorming. If we had power in the state legislature, what could we do? What can we pass that can really help landowner rights, landowner advocacy, so that we don't have to get run over by these companies at this rate? So with that, I will pass it over to Chris. If you can explain a little bit about how this awkward moment of limbo is impacting landowners, why that's important.
Sure. Well, hey, good evening, everyone. It's good to see many of you on this call. I've recognized some of your names, don't recognize many of them. And of course, I see a bunch of phone numbers there and don't have those memorized either. But it's great to have so many of you on the call. Yeah, just a little background about myself. My name is Chris Johns. I'm with the firm Cobb and Johns. We've been involved in shutting down challenging pipelines and have had some success around the country, shutting down pipelines in Texas, in Oregon, West Virginia, Virginia, North Carolina, and we also represent landowners if the cases actually go to eminent domain. So if it's found that the project's able to go forward, they have the right to take your property, they have the right to go ahead and with the project, we help landowners maximize their compensation because it's a big deal to have pipelines going through your property. You've got the safety risks, you've got the concern, you've got the loss of privacy. And the reality is it just makes sure these pipelines make land less valuable. And so we work with landowner groups to try to shut down projects because the ideal solution is not to have pipelines going through your land. But if we're unable to stop them, and we've had some great success shutting down pipelines, but a lot of them get through too, where a court, a regulatory agency says, yeah, you can go forward with your pipeline. Well, then we help landowners get maximum compensation. And a lot of people think, oh, I'll just take what the pipeline offers me. But the reality is you can get multiples of what they originally offer you in most cases. Our experience is seen anywhere from, getting 3-4 times the amount that people were offered to getting, 20 times to in some exceptional cases. There was one eminent domain case where we got somebody, I think it was 1,500 times what the original amount was. I think the original amount was $1,400 and we ended up getting the client $7 million. So, it can be a huge range. So it's important as landowners to bind together, to work together and try to stop the pipelines because that really is the best outcome for almost anybody. So I'll explain a little bit about what I understand is going on with the DeLa Express pipeline. If you look up DeLa Express pipeline and call the number there, or you call the Moss Lake partners who are the people who are in charge of this and we're going to be building this line, if you call the number associated with this pipeline, it's disconnected now. Like that number no longer works. We've had land agents tell some of our landowners that this project is not just going to be postponed, it's kind of on hold, but actually the plan is to cancel the project. That's it. That would be a huge win. And right now you're in a limbo state where you don't know what's going to go on and so think about it. What's the issue with having you guys in a limbo state? Well, if you decided to sell your land, for example, most of the promulgated real estate, sales forms in Texas, you have to check whether there's any pending or threatened litigation. Have you been threatened with a lawsuit? And I think most of you would have to answer yes, because this is a threatened thing that they're going to take property rights from you. And so if you were trying to sell it, you'd need to disclose that. If you were trying to get a refinance on things, a lot of times the bank or the other lender will ask, is there any pending or threatened litigation? What would you have to answer? I mean, I'm not here to advise you on that particular thing, but a lot of people would probably feel like, to be 100% honest, 100% transparent, which is the good thing to be, that you would have to actually disclose that you've got this threatened litigation against you. And so this is something that I call condemnation blight. It's your land has got a cloud hanging over it. It's kind of blighted. Your land is blighted because you've got this threat hanging over you, and you don't know whether it's going to actually happen or not. And fortunately for you, it looks like this project may be canceled. And so that's fantastic news. I wish we could say that we were wholly responsible for that. That's not the reality. We don't know all the reasons why this deal fell apart, but it could have to do with the market. It could have to do with they decided to structure this the wrong way. Maybe they haven't lined up the commitments from people who want to use the pipeline that gives them enough assurance that it's worth spending all the money they would have to spend for the pipeline. And so there could be a lot of market reasons or just bad management, or, I think a lot of people look at it and wondered, well, why would you ever go to FERC? Why would you ever go to Washington, D.C. to try to get approval for a line that mostly just goes through Texas? What a lot of companies have been doing is they've been doing what are called intrastate pipelines, meaning it's just a Texas pipeline. And then on the Louisiana side, they'd go doing just inside Louisiana intrastate pipeline. And then you'd go to FERC for the tiny little, the couple miles, 2, 3, 4, 5 miles, where it's going to cross the state line. And that's the only thing that you would go get approval from FERC. That you'd only seek approval for those, 5, 6 miles. And so they might have just structured this deal badly. So these are all reasons. And, somebody put in the chat, yeah, it's the price of oil or the price of gas. For sure, it could be market reasons why they have decided to just maybe cancel this project. They're doing the minimum required to keep this thing on life support in case something changes. So I think that's part of what they're doing with FERC, is they're doing their, hey, we'll check in with you in a few months and file something, and they're just keeping it on life support. Maybe they're looking for somebody to help them do the deal, find other investors to do it. So the reality is we don't know why the project's canceled or postponed, or whether it will be for sure canceled, but it's looking good for you guys. So I'm happy to share the good news with you. Bad news is you've got this condemnation blight. You've got this cloud hanging over you that when you're trying to work with your land and you're trying to use it to either sell it or get refinancing, take some cash out or whatever, you're dealing with this issue. You might also think, well, gosh, I want to develop my property. I want to do something on it. But you're thinking, well, gosh, if they're going to take a big strip through the middle of it, I really don't know where they're going to do it exactly, because maybe not all the surveying's been done. And so there's some concern to actually invest in your property right now because you don't know whether this big pipeline is going to be coming through. And if I remember right, it's a 42-inch pipeline. I don't know if you guys know how big that is, but that's like those big hula hoops that people use, the big ones, not the little ones, the big ones. It's the size of one of those big hula hoops. 42 inches is really big. So in the easement area could be really big. So yeah, and we've got somebody, Cannon, appreciate that. We're implementing restorative grazing, and this line goes straight through one of our largest pastures. Yeah, exactly. That you're not able to really develop it the way that you develop your land, take care of your land, be good stewards of it the way that you want to. So again, this condemnation blight's a real problem, and it's something that I would encourage each of you. And I think Jay or Miguel will put into the chat some information about how you could write to FERC and say, hey, I want to talk to you, FERC, about this project. We want you to just dismiss it, get this, tell DeLa that they either have to fish or cut bait, because we're just hanging out here trying to develop our land. We might want to sell it, we might want to refinance it, we might want to do other things with it, and we can't make plans with our lives if this thing is just hanging out without knowing. So yeah, this is something I'd encourage each of you to do, is check out this link with the action guide. I think that'll have some information about how you can contact FERC, write FERC and say, hey, that you don't want this project just hanging out over your heads forever. They should have to commit to it or get rid of it, because it causes problems when you want to develop, refinance, sell your property. So anyway, that's a big thing to share. The other thing, and maybe we'll just pause right there and see if there are any questions about this part of the conversation tonight. Yeah, if Targa succeeds, then DeLa will resurface. That's possible, right? So any other questions, feel free to put it, or comments, feel free to put it into the chat. We'll do our best to address those, and just give everybody, a little time to do that. But while you're doing that, we'll maybe start the other conversation tonight, which is, Texas. I'm guessing a lot of you have spent a lot of years here. Maybe a lot of you were born here, grew up here. I'll just say, I'm going to shoot straight with you. It's a lot harder to organize against pipelines in Texas than any other state I've ever done work in. And I'm based in Texas. My family lives in Dripping Springs, which is out in the hill country, about 30 miles west of Austin. And, so we love it here. And so when I say this, I don't mean to criticize my fellow Texans. I'll just say, when I'm in Oregon, when I'm on the East Coast, when I'm other places, landowners tend to really do a good job of organizing and saying, hey, we really don't want these private pipelines by private companies going through my land. And so it's a lot easier to organize in other places than Texas, where I think here we're so used to just have the oil and gas industry has such power here and has done amazing things for the state's economy. It's, you look at the public universities, they've got massive, multi-billion-dollar endowments because people contribute some of their mineral interests to University of Texas system, or the A&M system, or, Texas Tech, and some other universities, Baylor, SMU, TCU, you name it. There's been a lot of blessings from having such an amazing oil and gas industry in the state. There have also been a lot of problems, with health, and the fact that a lot of these companies, when they'll just leave the pipelines in the ground and leave it for landowners to kind of clean up the mess afterward, and they'll just throw their old companies into bankruptcy so they don't have to have any ongoing obligations to take care of things. Same thing with plugging wells. A lot of times companies just, they'll pump everything they can, and then they'll just leave the wells and creating danger, health risk to people, and they get away with it too. So I'm not here to we all benefit. Even the fact that we're having this conversation tonight, it's only made possible because of the energy industries. We got to be honest with ourselves, and there are very few of us who can really criticize and not be hypocrites, because we all have tons of blessings from the oil and gas industry in terms of, being able to travel, having the kinds of houses we have, having the economy we have, being able to support our kids, support our families. A lot of it's been made possible. The way that we've built our economy has been built around the oil and gas industry. So I'm not here to like be ugly toward them, but I'll just say it's hard to get people in Texas kind of organized. And so one of the things we want to do is start a landowner organization just to make sure that the landowners are treated fairly, and so that the oil and gas industry has to just clean up its messes and not leave it to the landowners to be the ones that have to kind of suffer all the consequences. I mean, yes, we all get some benefits from it, but landowners in particular, they have to shoulder a lot of the burden. And so we want to really create an effective landowner organization in Texas. And we've got people who are willing to support that and help organize and let people like Bold Alliance, people, from other parts of the country who are just wanting there to be some fairness and to have landowners be treated well. And so that's one of the things we want to start doing is like, what could we do to organize as landowners? And some of that is going to the Texas legislature and getting some laws passed that just provide common sense protections for landowners. And so, I'd be curious if you could put it in the chat, like
Well,
if
Chris,
yeah,
I'm sorry, really quickly before we get into the discussion of the to do with the state legislature brainstorming policy ideas, I want to really quickly just run through the action guide for DeLa so that we can close that and move on to
great,
thinking big picture. But I put it here in the chat. It's bit.ly/DeLa action. There it is. Please let me know if you're unable to access that link, but if you are, I ask that you drop a thumbs up in the chat to let me know, yeah, I'm able to access it. I'm able to open that up so that we know. Okay. Um, let's see. Someone with an iPhone says they are unable to. Maybe Jay, if you can message them directly. Let's see. It's not okay. Here, let me try this now. I think I fixed it. How about now? I think it should be in the chat now. There it is. Okay, excellent. All right, so if you click on that link right there, we have 4 steps that we can take to get move on from this strange moment of limbo. So first, FERC. Here are here are step-by-step guidelines on how to submit a comment to FERC. It's a little bit there are some steps you need to take. The website is not 100% easy to use, but here we walk through every single step. These are really important. Like Chris mentioned, FERC has some governing authority over the pipeline company. We also included a template that you can use in your comment, basically saying, we want answers, we deserve answers. And please feel free to make this a personalized message in addition to the main message of we require transparency for DELA's status. Second, we want to contact Moss Lake Partners directly so that they can understand that there is an organized, unified landowner opposition. If they understand and if they feel our presence, that we're organizing and that we have a strategy, we hope that it's less likely they'll go through with a risky investment that's already in a risky position. We tried really hard to figure out the best way to contact them. As Chris mentioned, you call them and their phone doesn't work, which is a sign of their dysfunction. I think a sign of them falling apart, being a mess of an organization. But they do have an email on their website. We're thinking it's good for us to email them and ask for a meeting. Here's a really quick template. My name is blank. From blank county. I'm with, very importantly for you, include in the email, I'm with the organization Texas Easement Action Alliance. And we'd like to request a meeting with your leadership. You can send the email to this email right here, info@moslakepartners.com, and you can include us in the email thread as well. This is my email. You can include it there as well. And the third action for you all to take is to call your land agents. I know some of you haven't have had some discussions with land agents already. Um, it's important to ask from them, do you know what's going on? When was the last time you heard something from Moss Lake Partners? That can all help inform our strategy. And then lastly, to share back with the group. So we have this forum where you can um, let us know what happened. What did you hear from the company? Again, so that when we next meet as an organization, which will be sometime next month, we have more information, better intel. So the that's action guide in summary. Does anyone have any questions on how to use the guide, how to access this? Any thoughts on the strategy before we go big picture?
Okay.
All right, so let's go ahead and move forward to thinking big picture, huh?
Yeah. Well, again, and I appreciate Cannon your comment that you've got a defunct pipeline running across your land, and are there things you can do to get that easement canceled or the pipeline removed? Yeah, it's kind of important to do that. I've been involved in some cases where it's there are issues about whether that easement is still good or whether it's really dead. And once the pipeline is no longer running, there's a how can you make sure that it's considered abandoned so that they can't just sell the easement to some other company and then use that easement to put a new pipeline and not have to kind of go through the process where they would have to get their pipeline approved and also have to pay you money to go through. And so, yeah, there are things you could do. Feel free to reach out to me. I'll put my email into the chat, and you feel free to talk about, reach out to me and we can talk about that. But it is important to do that so that it doesn't. There can be cases where the pipeline was functional. The last time it was functional was 30 years ago, and yet people try to revive that easement and make it so that they can sell it to somebody else, and then somebody else puts a pipeline through and doesn't have to pay you anything and doesn't provide you the kind of protections that you need. So yeah, that's a real issue. Yeah, I guess the next thing we're going to talk about is organizing. And, kind of, we talked a little bit before. In Texas, it's a little harder. A lot more people are used to having pipelines going through their property. And it's like, okay, just another pipeline, just go ahead, put it through. And the law is pretty unfavorable to landowners right now. I mean, pipelines don't really have to show that this is really for a public use. They'll come up with ways to make it look like you've probably heard the term common carrier, which means that they're transporting oil and gas products for somebody other than just themselves. But in reality, they're just doing it for themselves. But they'll say that they'll structure things to make it look like they're carrying it for multiple people, and then they get to put it through your land. And I'm sorry, like, that doesn't make common sense. That's not a public use. That's a public use. That's private use, private gain. Nobody else shares in it. It's just those profits to that company. That's not a real public use. And so that would be an example of the kind of thing that we could do together, is like address that issue. We could also, get the legislature, perhaps, invite the legislature to pass legislation that would require these companies to put up a bond. So at the end, do something to properly shut down their line or to remove it and not leave it for the landowners to be burdened with that forever. There are just some common sense things that we could do if we had an effective landowner organization in Texas. Other states have effective landowner organizations where they get laws passed, they are able to negotiate better requirements for pipeline companies. If they can't stop pipelines, at least they could make sure that there are some regulations in place or some agreements in place to make sure that landowners are protected better. So anyway, these are all ideas for organizing as a group and starting to get support so that we go to the legislature. And if enough people, I used to work on Capitol Hill in DC, and I hope you won't hold that against me. It was a long time ago. But if we heard from 7 or 8 constituents about an issue, that would put it on the radar of the lawmakers, of the senator, for example, that I worked for. And it doesn't take a ton of folks to start writing until they realize, oh, this is an issue that people actually care about. So being organized to be able to provide support when people are in litigation, and to try to shut down projects, to also getting involved in some efforts to try to get some legislation passed that would be good for landowners. That's what we want to do. And we need to start somewhere. And the folks who are on this call, I'm hoping that we get this DeLa Express pipeline shut down. But I hope that even if we do, that you would be willing to be part of an organization of landowners where we can go together and start to do some things to protect landowner rights in Texas. And this, you might have missed it on DeLa. You might get through it and not have another pipeline on your land. But I think it would be wonderful if we could start to think, wow, this is a really important issue. Because you know what happens? The oil and gas companies, they've got plenty of money. They make big contributions to legislators. They make big contributions to our elected judges in Texas. And they are the repeat players. Landowners don't tend to get hit with multiple eminent domain cases. Most people don't. You guys might, but you got hit by this one. Maybe you've been hit by other pipeline projects. But most people that probably don't get hit with. I could be wrong. In certain parts of the state, maybe everybody has pipelines running through their land, but around the state, most people don't. And so if we could start to organize, and we could really develop something special here together, and provide more rights for landowners. And I think a lot of legislators are going to be sympathetic to your position, because when you hear what's going on out there, you realize, oh, this doesn't make any sense. We got to do something about this. So I'd love to invite each of you to start thinking about what kind of changes in eminent domain law, in pipeline cases, would you like to see? And then we've got, I've been involved the last 2 legislative sessions, both at 2025 and 2023, of getting some really great landowner legislation passed. They didn't have to do with pipelines. It had to do with landowner rights generally, being able to get out of the control of cities that don't provide services is one example. Another one is being able to get out of a city's extraterritorial jurisdiction, and where people were not able to vote for city elected officials, and yet those same city elected officials were passing laws that affected them, passing regulations that affected their rights. And so, we've been able the last 2 legislative sessions to get really meaningful landowner laws passed, landowner protective laws passed. And so I think it'd be wonderful if you can make a commitment, and maybe it affects you personally. But I think if we could be part of an organization that protects landowners against abuses in pipeline cases, pipeline situations. This would be wonderful. And so I'm curious how many of you, and I know some of you might not be able to add in, make comments there, but I'm curious, maybe ask yourself the question, do I want to, is that something that I'd be willing to give a little time to? I'd be willing to spend, 15 minutes a month, half an hour a month. That could make a difference. If everyone were willing to do that, I think we would have a real chance at making some real meaningful changes in how our current system works. So think about that. Think whether you're willing to make that kind of a commitment, 15 minutes a month, 30 minutes a month to seeing some change happen.
That's
Yeah.
right. Absolutely. Absolutely. If we don't if we don't organize, we will never win. And it'll be an uphill battle. Like Chris mentioned, the state has particularly benefited from the oil and gas industry. So we should get our fair share. They should be good neighbors instead of being bad neighbors. So I think there could be a huge opportunity, especially if it comes from Texan landowners to get some state legislation passed. I want to spend a few minutes. I'm sharing my screen right now. Are you all able to see this screen sharing, this whiteboard that I'm putting on the screen? So I'm just putting some concepts on here that we can consider for our policy platform or for the demands of our organization once we get to that point. But just in the conversation so far and in the chat, I've identified these three um, topics, and I want to ask if there are others. So one topic is abandoned oil and gas infrastructure, how landowners have to deal with the negative consequences of that. For whatever reason, the company's not picking up. They went bankrupt, or they're just being bad neighbors. Bonds for cleanups, right? X amount of money has to go to a bond for protecting, ensuring that there's money to clean up the mess. Maybe there are other specific policies we can create for that category. Then we also described eminent domain for private gain, removing the common carrier loophole.
Hmm. Yeah,
Then
and I've noticed in the chat, there are some real good suggestions like doing a better job protecting Native American sites and also having requirements to try to use pre-existing corridors and easements and running pipelines along roads or railroads. And yeah, so I just know building pipelines close to schools and having bonds for pipeline removal, after their useful life's over. Protection for watersheds. Yeah, I love these ideas.
this is great. This is great. Does anyone want to come off mute and voice some of the what you described here in the text in the chat? I think that would be great.
And don't feel like you need to hold back. Yeah, it looks like maybe people might not be able to do that. At least some people might not be able to actually speak in the chat.
Ah,
Maybe that's something we
okay.
fix for future calls. Um,
Yes.
but I don't self-edit. Like, don't think, oh, I don't know if this is a good idea or not. It's better to brainstorm and think of too many ideas rather than not think of enough. So feel free to, put other things in there. Having taught the eminent domain course at the University of Texas Law School for 7 years, and practicing in this area for, I guess, over 20 at this point. I have some thoughts about what changes could be made, but I think it's great to get stuff from landowners, who see things that the people that have been a little too close to it for a little too long might not see as possible solutions. So don't edit yourself. Like, feel free to put something in there.
Yes, and I think I we apologize. I think the way the calls is set up is does not allow for you all to go off mute. But if you put it in the chat, we will bring it to life and we can have that discussion this way. We just set it up differently. But I'm adding what was described here, protections to watershed. Alyssa described labor preference for unions. Alyssa, correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, but what I think this refers to is the company has to, when they're contracting on the construction, for there to be a preference for the workforce to be unionized instead of non-unionized. Um, yes, there you go. I know a huge relevant union in our state is La Una, and I think yeah, it would be a great form of so I'm putting all this under the category of community and environmental protections, protections over watersheds, um, especially when there is connections to the water supply for agriculture and drinking water. We've got no building in proximity to schools.
Yeah, and hey, the other thing to and keep on putting it as we're talking, feel free to keep on putting ideas in there. And I'll say, don't worry. There are going to be some of these ideas that are just going to be politically impossible where we are right now. But you got to start somewhere, right?
That's
And
right.
and one of the great things about working together as a team, I've noticed that the tough legislation, the tough landowner rights legislation that gets passed tends to be a combination between really good lawyers and really good lobbyists. You might not like it, but lobbyists are really important in navigating the process here in Texas. I wish it weren't like that. I wish it were more like, just absolutely citizen power is really, really important. And we've got a very, very well funded oil and gas industry in Texas that is always looking at the legislature and doing everything they can to protect their industry and make it so that they don't have to, do anything that would make it more expensive, more cumbersome for them to just do what they want to do. And I get it, like that's how they are. And at the same time, we are going to need to find probably good lobbyists to help us navigate the process. And so I think we really need three things. We need landowners like you to put pressure on your legislators. We need the lawyers to help draft the legislation in a good way. And we need lobbyists to advise us on what is politically possible and then help us actually carry that out. So, this is a thing that requires different groups doing different things, working together toward the same goals. Um, yeah, like all these ideas about greater protection for wildlife. For example, I'm representing a family that has a 225-acre ranch that has bison and has the golden cheek warbler, and it has under U.S. Fish and Wildlife gave them a permit to raise toucans, including 10 different kinds of toucans, including six on the endangered species list. And yet the city of Dripping Springs, even though it wasn't in their city limits, they're trying to cater to developers, and so they want to put a raw sewage line right through the middle of this ranch because they see, oh, well, that would be cheaper for us because then we wouldn't have to go on the edge of neighborhoods and maybe have to do a bunch of eminent domain cases. We could do just one and go, a long distance through this ranch's land. So we figured out a way to stop the project. It's been stopped for years at this point. And I guess what I'd say is that, yeah, protection of wildlife, TCEQ is not taking that seriously. They go out, they do their wildlife surveys, but it's pretty much a rubber stamp. And so, is there anything we could do to make those protections better? Yeah, so good comment there.
Absolutely. I'm now just figuring out that how I'm able to get participants to speak. So I've got Suzanne, you're able to go on off mute. Alyssa, yourself as well, um, Cannon as well. Um, let's test that out. Alyssa, for example, can you go off mute to see if we can hear you out?
Hi everyone.
Okay, there you are.
Hi.
Um, welcome, welcome. So I have here DRK. Um, you mentioned here demanding a term limit for easement, 10, 20 years, otherwise request for additional compensation. Um, can you introduce yourself and explain a little bit about that, what you meant by that? And Chris, I'd like your thoughts on that if you've heard that happen before.
Yeah, yeah, happy to. I think it's a fantastic idea. I don't know if 10 years is probably a number that's not politically possible, but who knows? Be nice if it were like even if you could get it to 30 years, that would be fantastic. Yeah, and I see a question there as well about what's our motivation and compensation. We can talk about that in just a bit, but maybe we'll answer the question at hand. Um, so I'll turn it over to whoever wanted to make a comment
Yeah,
or question.
I put a DRK. Are you able to go off mute? And if you're not, you can just let us know in the chat if you're unable to.
Okay, it looks like would like to stay on text. Okay.
Ah, okay, no problem, no problem.
Yeah. Do
Um,
you want me to address the
yeah,
question about what's the easement action team's motivation and what's our compensation? Yeah, it's good stuff. So the motivation is one, protecting landowner rights. It's also, and I think it's going to be a little different when you're dealing with groups. I think there's a general belief that pipeline companies have not done common sense things to make sure that landowners are protected. So I think that's part of the motivation. There's also a motivation by some of the people that have helped fund this organization's work, that hey, we get that we're in an oil and gas, we depend heavily on oil and gas, but in some ways oil and gas has been given a lot of basically subsidies by the government, and that it would be if we're ever going to move to a more kind of balanced energy system, then we need to make sure that other competitors, other energy competitors, we got to make sure that they're not fighting with one arm tied behind their back, that they're not discriminated against, and that they are able to kind of compete on a level playing field. And so I think that's the belief of some of the people that have funded this organization's work. So yeah, and so as far as compensation, when it comes time to actually trying to prevent the project from happening, kind of how it works is we ask, for people that want to join the organization and actually fight to try to prevent a particular project from happening. People would kind of pool some resources and put in a little bit. Each person puts in a little bit to get the protection in court to try to prevent the companies from coming on, for example, onto your land to do surveys when they don't have the right to do that yet. To fight in FERC, but a lot of the funding actually comes from some bigger organizations, including some charitable organizations that see that they want to support landowner rights in these cases. They also want there to be kind of an equal playing field, level playing field in the energy world. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I'm happy to go deeper if you would like.
right. And I'll add to that. Jay and I have spent the last few months traveling across the state, looking at, I mean, talking to different landowners, knocking on doors, canvassing, and we were able to do that partially on a grant. Um, and what motivates us isn't the money. We're not here for the money. What we care about is landowner protection, and the importance of getting the oil and gas industry to be good neighbors. A lot of my family members are work in the Permian Basin in the oil fields, so I personally understand the importance of it, and but I've seen how the industry can be irresponsible and put, for example, my uncle who hauls produced water to be at risk. And so I think the community part is very important. Jay can also tell you stories about landowners in his family in West Texas and how the industry, when going unchecked, can really harm us. So that's what motivates us. Now, really important question, Kay Purdon, and I'll ask you if you can go off mute and also talk to us about this, but um, is the subject of this organization just DeLa or general for Texas residents impacted? I think the focus is first and foremost landowners. We feel like that's something that we really have to highlight the importance of organizing landowners. But we want to go beyond just this pipeline. Targa was mentioned. There is the Speedway pipeline. There is the Eiger pipeline. There's the Mustang pipeline. There are a lot of pipelines. So we want to have the focus be landowners, but the scope to be broader than just DeLa.
And to
Um,
answer William's question, William Buttery, thanks for this question. Does the group focus only on pipelines? What about power line projects? The real focus, at least right now, has been on dealing with DeLa, right? And that's what brought a lot of you guys here. But it's beyond just the DeLa project. It's pipelines in general, but it's also even beyond that. It's about landowner protections and being able to get common sense rules in place. And that would include things like power line projects. I mean, my law firm, we handle electric transmission line projects, we handle road projects, we do pipeline projects, any kind of condemnation case, people, counties taking land for a park. We do all kinds of eminent domain work, but you're right that the main focus has been on pipelines, but it's also just about landowner rights in general. And if you want to talk about a power line project, we can talk about that here and see if there's some legislation we could pass that would benefit not just takings in pipelines cases, but also takings for other kinds of cases as well. And if you want to talk about a particular power line project, feel free to reach out to me. Personally, I'd be happy to talk with you.
well, I want to, yeah, Cannon, would you like to go off mute and talk a little bit about that that story, and as well if you'd like to talk more about the restorative grazing that you all have going on your land and how DeLa is in the route of it and threatens it. So, are you able to go off mute?
Yes, I am.
I believe I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. Hi, my name's Cannon. I'm sitting in for my mother, Allison, who she and my dad are currently the ones working on the ranch. It's technically owned by my grandparents. It's in Coleman County, just about 40 minutes south of Abilene, Texas. It's a place that I've gone to all of my childhood, both hunting and four wheeling and helping my grandfather push cattle through pens. But it had lay defunct for a while, and so my parents are trying to use this as basically their retirement. They want to get away from it all and kind of really invest in the land and their heritage. And so, but to not ramble on, I am an English major, but so we are trying to actively create a restorative grazing environment on our ranch, which involves curtailing cows to small paddocks where they will eat everything, and then we have a mobile electronic fence that we move them every single day. And so the idea is that they eat, instead of eating just the things they prefer, they'll eat everything because they get hungry, and then they do their business all over the land, um, and then stomp it all into the ground, and then we move on. And the idea is you move them from paddock to paddock to paddock, and by the time we bring them back around to where they started, the natural fertilizer they've done has produced better roots, better greenery, and it's recovered enough so that they're not just, tearing up roots and hurting water retention. It's a really cool program. Um, and we also seem to be in a very unique spot because Coleman County has no groundwater. We rely on all of our waterfalls from the sky. So being able to have ground that retains water is paramount. And when my parents started working this place, we had some fields that were horribly, like, it's just sand and rock. And but already we're seeing some improvement. On top of that, we have a large diversity of natural flora and fauna on the place that, according to several programs, is like oh gosh, I can't remember. It's the something pheasant organization. Um, Basically, they help hunters and but also look for, maintain natural flora and fauna. But their idea is that they're creating environments so that if game hunters want to come up and shoot some birds and stuff like that, you have an environment that is conducive to a healthy population that can take some hunting. And they said that we have one of the most diverse and naturally healthy um, spaces that they've ever seen. Um, all right, I'm going to start moving on. So that's what we're trying to do. And a pipeline going across our land like that, going through two of our largest fields, is really, really awful. Um, but we have some hope because over a decade ago, when I was in college, so more like 15 years ago, we fought off a hydrogen power line that was going to use the old pipeline corridor that we previously had. I'm pretty sure it's mostly defunct at this point, or completely defunct. But we did it. We fought it off by um, organizing with other ranchers in our area who also were along the proposed pipeline. And also we got a archaeologist to come out, and I don't have the man's name or contact info, but I'm sure we can get that to you if you're interested, to come out and assess the Native American sites on our place. Which, once he was out there, we determined that we had ancient pit ovens, which were used by the Toya Native American peoples, who were no longer present by the time European settlers showed up on our shores. They were 700 years ago, is when they were kind of like last present in Texas. So we have three of them on our land, and the old existing pipeline runs straight through the middle of all three. It's like a triangle, and then the old pipeline runs right through it. If I've lost the plot, please let me know. I can keep going. I love this land. I love this place. But
Oh yeah, absolutely. So
if you
that
have any questions, or if I need to just make space for someone else to talk, I can do that right now.
yeah, I think we can transition to the end here. The importance there is using like whatever means we can to prevent these projects. I think we can think of these policy proposals so that they benefit landowner rights generally. So improvements in landowner rights to protect against oil and gas pipelines can also help against power lines, for example, right? But I want to, before we close, I want to let everyone know that our next meeting will be in January. We don't have the date or time yet, but we will contact you directly through phone and email. So for us for if you're interested in continuing to participate in these discussions, um, like Chris mentioned, being part of an organization to build something instead of always being on the defense, please put your information um, in our website, and that can be right here, texaseasement.org/join. There you can put your name, phone, and email, and we'll be able to contact you, invite you to our next meetings. Um, and even if you're just curious, even if you're not ready to make a full commitment to say, I'm going to do this um, 5 hours a month, even if you're just curious to learn more, we really encourage you to go ahead and include your information there to sign up there. We'll send our updates. And even if you just want to follow along to see what information we get on DeLa, you can go ahead and include your name there. But I do want to open up the floor again. If anyone else has any other idea, any other policy goal that you all have, a vision that you have about protecting landowner rights that you'd like to voice before we head off. We're we're posting the recording. We're posting this recording, um, and then I believe you'll be able to check the transcripts there, like the written text version.
And I
I
bet
think
we
by
could, I bet we could have it transcribed as well,
yeah,
so that
right. If that's needed,
people
we can make that
could
happen.
link to that. Yeah, good question. Yeah, I think, yeah. What about inviting lawmakers to affected ranches? All good questions. Feel free to keep on asking them. These are all great ideas, and I think once we have got more of the organization lined up, absolutely, I think it makes sense to have lawmakers come out. Yeah, good. Well, thank you everyone for joining us this evening, and we want to be respectful of your time. I know it's been we wanted to keep it to just an hour, and thank you again.
Thanks, y'all. We'll see you in January. We'll send you the info about that.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
See you.
All good. Have a good evening.